Hey everyone, it's Joy here for Honeybee Stamps. For my project today, I did a bunch of layering with stamping, heat embossing, and die cutting. So I'm going to show you my first layer, or one of my layers, is the Lovely Layers Tulips. I am using the largest tulip flower in that die set, and I have die cut them from watercolor cardstock, smooth watercolor cardstock, and here are the pieces that I've die cut. I'm going to be using Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers to do the watercoloring for these images. I have this is Waffle Flowers watercolor media matte, something like that. And so I have some water in one of those little squares there that I'm going to dip my brush in. And I'm coming in with orange and then bright yellow. So that first color is orange, and then I'm coming in and blending out some of that orange with the bright yellow. I want to wipe that off because Zig markers will grab that darker color on the lighter color marker. So if you don't want just tons of dark color, make sure you wipe your tip off frequently. Now I've dipped that brush in water and I'm just going to blend this up, and I kind of like it to look a little messier. So I like these streaks and lines. I feel like it gives a lot of detail to the flower. So I'm going to do that for all four of these pieces here. So it's going to be the same colors, orange and bright yellow. So again, I'm going to lay down the orange. I'm just cleaning up my work surface in between because I'm trying not to get too messy. So I am laying down this orange color. Again, you can see I'm laying it down kind of messy. Then I'm going to come in with the bright yellow and kind of drag some of that orange up a little bit higher to the middle part of this die cut. Then I'm going to use the water to kind of blend out the rest of it. Now, if you didn't want to use water, you could just continue with that bright yellow all the way to the top and just finish coloring it all the way and adding the shadow shading parts with that orange. But I like the water look. I like how soft it blends it out. But again, I'm keeping in some of those streaks from the color, and I'm not being real neat about it, but I am kind of flicking upwards so that way it leaves those streaks and I kind of blend from the bottom up. If I need more of that dark color, I'm going to bring my brush down into that darker orange and pull it back up to the top of that image. So I'm going to do that next step on the next little part. So you have the second largest, then there's going to be this third largest, and then you have that really small piece that's going to go on this. So this is a nice layering die. So again, I'm going to come in with that orange, add that at the bottom, and then coming in with the bright yellow. And I just thought this orangey, yellowy color is beautiful. I looked up online just different colors of tulips, and this one just really stood out to me. I am going to bring in some of that bright yellow into the center part of the flower, even though we're going to be coloring that separate later. Okay, for the final little piece, again, just doing the same thing, getting it nice and colored. Super, super simple, super, super easy. And if you did not want to use two colors, you could just use one of those oranges and use the water to blend that out and bring the color everywhere. Okay, so now let's do the two center pieces. I am going to be using bright yellow and lemon yellow. So the lemon yellow is lighter. Of course, the bright yellow is darker. That's what we used on the flower here. I'm going to add a little bit of the bright yellow at the base of these little images, and then lemon yellow, I'm going to blend that out. And you can see me kind of brushing off some of that darker yellow, because if I don't, it's going to drag too much of that dark color to the top, which is what I don't want to do. Okay, now these are the Lovely Layers Greenery. I just took one of those images, again, from watercolor cardstock, and I'm using light green and pale green. So the darkest is the light green, and then I'm adding that pale green. And then coming in with the water, I really made sure to clean my brush in between the orange color and the green color. And I'm just going to blend this out, adding just the tiniest bit of water to the tip of my brush and just getting this a nice blend. And I'm going to do that for all three of these leaves. Then I want to do some splattering. I'm going to come in with that light green color and we're going to splatter onto all of the leaves. So I'm just coloring some of that onto my work surface, adding some water, enough that I can get a good splatter, and I kind of want it dark. So now that's perfect, and I'm just going to tap that brush against my finger and splatter all over the leaves. I'm going to do the same thing for the flowers. I'm using the orange color because it's the darker, and I'm going to splatter all over this. Then I'm going to come in and splatter with just some water. Being that this is Zig Clean Color Real Brush Markers, it is water reactive, so I'm going to bring in some water, and I'm going to tap that and then just dab off some of that. But I did want to let those other little those orange splatters dry first because I didn't want to smear that. And then I'm coming in with the water, and I'm going to do that for the leaves as well. So just a bunch of little dots, and then just tapping it off with a dry paper towel. And here I am doing that same thing for the leaves here, making sure that my brush was clean. So you can see I have all those spots of not clean water, but here is my clean water, splattering this all over those little images. And I love that it gave it that fun, I don't know, just this fun splattered distress look. I think it turned out really super pretty. Okay, so now here is some patterned paper from the Modern Spring Pattern Paper 6x6 paper pack. I have that in my MISTI, and then I'm coming in with the Barnwood background stamp. And I'm going to, my original idea was just to ink it up with some white pigment ink. Well, first my idea was I was going to do white embossing powder. Then I changed my mind right there, wiped off my anti-static powder tool, came in with some white pigment ink and started stamping on this background. But you really couldn't see it all that well. Now, pigment ink stays wet for a really long time, so I actually just went and grabbed some white embossing powder and decided to sprinkle that on so you could see that wood grain pattern a little bit more against that beautiful patterned paper. So I'm going to sprinkle that on, and when I dump this off, you guys can see how much you can see that wood grain so much better. So I'm going to heat that until it's nice and melted, and I really made sure my heat gun was nice and my heat tool was nice and hot so it did not warp this paper too much at all. But I love that wood grain against that beautiful like leafy background, and I love that kind of peachy color. This like soft apricot peachy color I think is just so pretty. I'm going to trim this down to an A2 size, a little bit smaller than an A2 size. Okay, this is the Quatrefoil A2 cover plate. I'm running that through the die cut machine on white cardstock, and we are going to die cut out part of this pattern. So I have the Scallop A2 card frames and the Sweet Stacks rectangles. So here is that Sweet Stacks rectangle. I'm going to die cut that out. I actually ended up using a smaller piece here, a smaller die, and I didn't like it, so I redid it off camera with one size larger than this, but the design is still exactly the same. Now I'm die cutting the Scalloped A2 card frames die from white cardstock. We're going to do some ink blending on this. Then we are going to add that Quatrefoil A2 cover plate piece that we die cut out. So on my mini stencil mat, I am taping off the scalloped edges. So I'm adding my tape right up to the stitched line because I want the scallops to stay white, and you'll see why in a minute with this other layer that we are going to create. I am inking up with Speckled Egg Distress Oxide ink, and then once I'm done inking that, I'm just going to peel back that tape and it will reveal the white scalloped edge. So when we add this Quatrefoil piece to it, it's going to look like that blends into the scalloped piece, which is exactly what I wanted it to do. So I've got some liquid glue here, and I'm going to adhere that down, and once we adhere it, you're going to see it almost looks like one whole piece. So this is another layer. So on that pattern paper, we layered on some embossing powder, some stamping and embossing powder, and now this we're layering some die cuts. I am using the Sweet Stacks circles. I am die cutting a circle from vellum, and this is going to be one of our layers as well. Now let's put together the Lovely Layers tulips. So I have the little center pieces of the flower. I'm going to glue those two together. I've got my reverse tweezers here, which is super helpful. And when I'm gluing, I'm only adding glue at the bottom because I want to be able to kind of pull apart the layers of the flowers, which is going to give it a little bit of dimension. If you wanted more dimension, you could add some foam tape between the flowers. But I added foam tape behind that little blue background piece. So I didn't want to add foam tape to the flower because it would be a really thick card. I'm going to add a little bit of tiny bit of glue to the center of that circle of vellum. And I'm going to use my flower to cover that up so you're not even going to notice that. Then we're going to tuck in all of those leaves. So that background pattern paper is trimmed down about a 1/16 of an inch on all sides. That center piece is popped up with foam tape. And then I'm just going to adhere my flower to the vellum piece, and then I'm going to start to tuck in these leaves. I will trim some of these down, but I'm just kind of deciding how I want these to lay and be behind this. I liked having a lot of greenery. I think that's really, really pretty. And I think that blue against that orange is just so, so pretty. So I trimmed off one of these little extra pieces that I already had. Even though it looks a little bit different than the other leaves, I like it. I think it's absolutely darling. Now, something I forgot to do was to take some of that white pigment ink and add that to the leaves and the flowers before I adhered it down. So I'm just coming in and gently taking it to the edges of the flowers and the leaves to add a little bit of extra detail to this. And I love that white look. It would also be pretty if you came in with an embossing, clear embossing ink and did some gold embossing powder on that. Okay, so I've got the sentiments here. This is the small card Big Hug stamp set. I am stamping that on white cardstock, doing some gold heat embossing. I prepped it with an anti-static powder tool. I'm going to heat that until it's melted, and then I'm going to use the coordinating dies. Now on this stamp set and this die, the dies line up perfectly where they are placed on the stamp set, so it was really easy to find what die went with what stamp set. So I'm going to tape that in place with some low tack tape and then run that through my die cut machine. And then we can adhere that to the card. And I'm going to pop these sentiments up with foam tape because I love dimension behind my sentiments. So I'm just going to trim down some pieces of foam tape and adhere that behind. And this sentiment says, "You are made of wonderful." And I just think that that is so sweet. And I think you could use that for a birthday card, for a thinking of you card, for just any type of card. So I'm going to place that down, and then I'm going to come in with some pretty Posh sequins, and I'm just actually going to pick out the gold sequins and adhere those down. And once those are all in place, then this card is completely finished. Sorry, I don't have the footage of me gluing them down. I just used some liquid glue, but something happened to that part of my footage and it was not usable. So I adhered that down. I adhered this to a white A2 size card base, and then the card is completely finished. So I hope that you enjoyed this project with all of these fun layers. Thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.